Okay, so um, we are on my very first interview for my weekly recycling program for my blog, Unboxed Adventure at WordPress.com. And this is just sort of a fun way to play with the idea of recycling and that that's a good thing for us, and to talk to people about how they have gotten out of their own box and are living the life of their dreams, living authentically and following their heart wisdom. And I'm really delighted to have my first guest here today, who is Tom Trimbath. And Tom has many interesting aspects to him. He's an author and a photographer, a speaker, an educator. He's on the board of the New Roadmaps Foundation. He's written several books. His first book was entitled Just Keep Pedaling. And then he has a series of photographic nature series books. And also he wrote a book, Dream, Invest, Live, to talk about how to live the life you desire and have financial integrity with that. I hope I am capturing that right. You can correct me,
Oh, you're
Tom.
doing good. Oh, I'll correct you in a bit.
Okay, and the last book that he wrote is called Walking, Thinking, Drinking Across Scotland. So you can see that Tom is an interesting character that we have here today.
Thank you.
And we're going to have some fun, Tom, talking about how it was that you felt that you stepped onto the road less traveled. What motivated that? What did that look like for you? And what has that journey been about?
It's interesting to think of it as stepping onto the road less traveled. As the image that flashed to mind was jumping off the highway before I got run over.
Yeah, okay.
Because I used to be an engineer, an aerospace engineer at Boeing.
Yes.
And that was actually, it was interesting work, it was interesting people and whatnot, but the culture was just not healthy at that time. So it was really a case of saying, okay, can I do something different? And what's more important, my health or my career, or what else is out there? And yeah, it took a bit of guts and thinking to kind of say, okay, I'm willing to try something. And actually, what I'd made enough money that through very frugal living and just very silly, simple investing, had been able to retire. And the next career I took on was, of all things, teaching karate.
Ah, I didn't know that.
So if that's not a leap, that's a leap.
Yes, all right. You chopped that lifestyle, right?
Yeah, really. But one of the things I learned from karate, because I've been doing it for over 25 years now, is to trust your intuition. Yeah. And my intuition was, it's time to make a change. Yeah. Which I had a lot of reasons to do it, but Lord knows there's an awful lot of reasons not to as well. It's a heck of a paycheck to give up. But if you're not following your intuition, you're following somebody else's rules.
Yes.
So since I decided I want to live my own life rather than somebody else's, then the intuition suggests something, and I have to at least respect that.
Okay, and so I know that part of, in the beginnings of that journey, you took a literal physical journey of bicycling across America, which was the basis of your first book. How did that all come about?
Oh, that was easy. I thought I was fat, and I wanted to lose weight. So I figured I should do some low-impact aerobics, and while I'm not working, I should go out there and I should just do that for like 6 weeks at a time. And I figured that'd get boring if I was running. And bicycling was low impact, which was cool. And if I did 6 weeks of bicycling in the neighborhood, that could get boring. But if I stretched that out, I could get across the country.
Right.
And that's the sort of thing where it's like, okay, so this seems like a reasonably good idea. I'll do this. It wasn't until after I'd done that that friends then convinced me to write the book. Okay. And it was following the intuition from writing that book where I went, that's how you write a book. Oh, I can do a better job of that. I'll go write another one.
Okay.
And it was from those ones, just one other thing, when I was doing those, I was getting the photos. The next series of books were up in the Cascades, the mountains around Seattle, and I was taking photos as notes. Well, when I came back, they liked the books, but they said the photos are great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow my intuition and sell the photos. And one thing leads to another, and you end up where I am now.
Right. So I think this is an important point for people to understand, is that sometimes when you take that leap into a new way of being or exploration, you don't necessarily know anything more than that one next step. And it is a lot about trusting.
Uh-huh. Or at least you think you know where the next step is, and you can be completely wrong.
Yes, I've experienced that.
Yes. But it took me a few years of going from one thing to the next that what I started realizing was that I actually was following my passion. I just didn't know it.
Right.
And it wasn't that my passion was writing. It wasn't that my passion was photography. It's my passion is people and ideas.
Yes.
And once I realized that, that made this all so much easier. In that I recognized that as what's central to what it is I do. And that's so much easier than to kind of go, why am I doing this? This is interesting, but why am I doing consulting? Oh, it's because I love it when somebody's got an idea and they want to have it go somewhere. Oh, heck, sign me up. I'll help with that. And that's the sort of thing where, now for some folks it is going to be the fact that their passion is writing, and it's the crafting of the word, or photography, and it is the lighting, and they're just going to get it perfectly. But I realized for me, that's like, it was the ideas of writing. It was the imagery that was captured in nature that folks might not see otherwise. It was getting those thoughts and ideas across to people, which is really where my passion was.
Right. I want to congratulate you on having the strength to follow that unfolding process, because sometimes there can be pressure, outside pressure, from whether it's partners or family, peers, to like, well, what exactly are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And when it's not clear yet, all the pieces haven't fallen together. I don't know if they've ever all fallen together, but enough to know, as you said, okay, I got it. My passion is ideas and people. So then from that point, you can begin to shape more what those offerings look like. But in the process, it can be a little messy
Oh,
of
yeah.
going here, going there, trying this, trying that, and but none of that is a mistake. I have to backtrack, when he said, well, sometimes you think you know what the next step is, but you were wrong. Is there any wrong?
Well, there's a couple times when I've stubbed my toe, and it was just like, yes, I ended up in the right direction, but did it have to hurt?
Right, right,
But you're right that it actually, it doesn't take as much internal courage as it takes to turn to your friends and family who actually care about you. It's not just people that are just making commentary on your life. It's folks that really care about you, and they hope you're heading the right direction, and they're looking, where are you going again?
right.
And that is, it's hard to kind of sometimes stand up for yourself and say, no, I'm pretty sure I got to go this way.
Yeah,
And there's been some times where I've taken some steps which, nothing illegal, nothing really unconventional, actually, in a lot of ways, and yet I'll just watch the number of phone calls die off for a while while
yeah,
folks try to see where I'm going. The emails die off for a while until folks see where I'm going before they re-engage with my life. It's an interesting process.
yeah, it is. It is. And I think it's one that we need to support more in this culture. And also, one of the things that I'd like to touch on with you is, I think we're going more from being very focused, one-pointed people. You choose a career, you stay with it for your life, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't vary from that. To people who we obviously all have more than one aspect to ourselves, and a lot of gifts and potential within that to explore. And so to limit someone by saying, you need to pick one thing and stick with it, I think
Mm-hmm.
is robbing ourselves of many gifts and a lot of fun and playfulness in the process.
This is true, and and it's also becoming a necessary consequence because we're living longer.
Yes.
If you picked a career at 21 and you're going to live to be 121, that's figuring in the first 21 years what you're going to do for the next 100.
Yeah.
That's be an incredibly low probability that you'd get that right.
Yes. And I don't want to discount the fact that some people do have a passion that is their complete focus for their life.
Oh yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Ooh.
I like to make space for both.
I mean, go back to the karate again. I look at the grandmasters. I look at the folks that far outrank me, and these people are spending their entire lives perfecting that aspect of themselves. And I feel so humbled because it's like I'm not spending that much time on any one thing, except that my thing is ideas and people, and that's hardly a category on a shelf in a bookstore. Or a series of movie titles that have a genre like that. But I look at those folks and it's just astonishing, and I'm just so impressed with that.
Yes.
By the way, just to edit the bio to go back, we talk about how one thing steps from another. I'm no longer on the board of the New Roadmap Foundation, but now I've become the project director for a history museum about how education changed when the computers came in.
Oh, interesting.
That's the next step, and I'm finding myself now working with a lot of humanities majors, folks that are used to having marble columns and little plexiglass things around things with little name tags on the side. And it's just, again, here's somebody's idea to have this kind of museum, and I'm just going to pursue that. I'm going to help them with that. To the outside, it looks like I've done something completely different, but to me, it just feels the same.
I can completely relate, Tom, because I am also an idea and I would say a visionary person, and but very much about ideas and seeing how everything is connected.
Yes.
So a lot of times I've been heading off in one direction, and people be scratching their heads like, well, how does this connect with that? It's like, trust me, it does. It's all connected.
Yeah.
I saw a great bumper sticker once that I really related to. I'm not a bumper sticker person, but it said, "All who wander are not lost."
This is true. I think that may be out of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But no, well, that's why I particularly like living in the community I live in that this is a community of folks here on Whidbey Island where a lot of folks have moved here because they have an idea how they want to live their life, and it's not fitting in with convention. And Whidbey is not the only place. There's a number of places like Boulder, Colorado, and places like that, where folks are gravitating to that. And it's not a case of everybody living the same life. They're not. But it definitely is easier to be trying to live your own life when you're standing beside somebody else who's just hoping that everyone will let them live their own life, rather than trying to do that in metropolitan Seattle, which is still a fairly progressive place, but I know trying to live the life I'm living over there, it's harder to find that support, whereas you go to a small community and it's easier, at least for me.
Yeah. So bottom line, quality of life. Describe the difference in the quality of life you experience living this way. In some ways, still exploring and pushing into new areas, and the life you came from, of having the security and the paycheck and those.
Well, we end up with a lot more stories, don't we? There's a line we used to have when we were hiring folks within Boeing, which was if we were hunting for somebody who had 20 years of experience, did they actually have 20 years of experience, or did they have 1 year of experience 20 times over, where they never really got past what they learned in their first year? And I'm finding folks that have a number of different things on their resume, effectively. That's what they're doing. It's looking at that jewel that is yourself and looking at all the various facets, and this is the one that's presented now, and this is the one that's presented now, and this is the one that's presented now. That quality of life isn't just richer because it's more stories, but you become much more, or at least I've become much more aware of who the rest of myself is, rather than just who I was as an aerospace engineer. It's really refreshing to realize that I can be an engineer and an artist.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm pointing out too about the multidimensional quality of us, and we can hold all of those pieces simultaneously and have it make sense.
Yeah, but I don't find that it's easy. It is a lot more work. Well, partly is because the irony of coming up with a book on personal finance at the same time the market crashes, you can't plan that.
Right.
And recovering from that has required me to go through some of these explorations. But I know that if I'd been required to go through those explorations without already having done some exploring, it would have been much more traumatic instead of mildly traumatic with an awareness that this is a series of lessons that are actually quite valuable.
And I think that that is sort of an earmark of people who go on an exploratory quest, really of their own inner self. I mean, it's of the world too, but to look at the circumstances of their life and to reflect more deeply and become more resourceful. I think it is a way of not depending on the external structures to give us all the answers.
Yeah, and considering all the apocalyptic scenarios folks are considering right now, because there's a lot of worries in the world, it is very empowering to realize that, well, those will affect all of us, but it's very empowering to have exercised that resourcefulness.
Yeah.
And to not having to say, okay, if I'm living in an apartment and this is where I'm getting my utilities and this is where I'm getting my entertainment, this is where I'm getting my food, and this is where I'm getting the money to pay for it all, and it's all coming from sources that have never changed. That idea of any disruption is painful, whereas I'm aware of a lot of different options I have for finding food, for finding water, for finding shelter and whatnot. I prefer to stay in my house. I prefer to live where I'm living, than eating what I've been eating, but I'm also much more flexible now in terms of keeping in mind other possibilities.
Yeah. You also have a strong community there, which I think is an important aspect as well. As you mentioned before, that in a place like Whidbey, people are there sort of one mind to say, what more potential do we have, and how can we support each other, and how can we enhance the quality of life together? So that also helps because you're individually resourceful and collectively extremely resourceful.
Yeah, there's very much less taken for granted, and it's much more conscious living. The part that I also love about it is the fact that it's much more varied as well than most folks think. In that there are some very conservative folks here, very libertarian, very liberal, very open-minded, and the thing that is common amongst them is the fact that they've thought through, this is the life I want to lead, and that's the common thread. And the fact that they, as long as they each other respect that consciousness, that's a really powerful aspect of community. Whereas in the stereotypical mainstream life, you're presented with your options and you take them by assumption. Here, assumptions get challenged all the time.
I think this is an excellent point, and that when we're living authentically and we're willing to be responsible and self-reflective, I think we're more willing to allow people their perspectives. If we're holding true to perspective we haven't completely bought into, we're having to kind of sell other people on it so we can convince ourselves.
Yes. There's a concept that I know I've seen between certain communities. One is if you understand somebody. In some communities, by understanding somebody, it is assumed that you agree with them.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm talking to, say, a Republican, and I'm saying I understand the Democrat, they assume I'm a Democrat. But in a more of an intentional community, you can say, oh, I understand the Republican, and I understand the Democrat.
Right.
I agree with something else that's completely different. But in some places, showing that you understand somebody has a different connotation to it, and it's a much more limiting connotation. And I'm looking forward to more society getting out to going, oh, okay, understanding each other has a lot more to it than just saying, okay, I'll do things the way you're doing them.
Right. This has been really wonderful, rich dialogue, and I so appreciate that you've come today and helped me launch this program. And
My pleasure.
there's so much more that we could go into. And what I'm suggesting to people who are watching these video blogs, if you see something on here that really piques your interest and you say, I want to know more about that, we'll have that person back again and we'll go deeper into that conversation. So don't worry, we won't leave you hanging. What I do want to say before I conclude this interview today, Tom, is just thank you so much.
Oh.
And I want you to share your blog site, if you would be so kind, so that if people want to check out your books or what you're up to, then they'll know where to go. You'll know best where to send them.
Well, thank you. It's trimbath.wordpress.com. So it's like trim the hedges, bath, take a bath, creative, as we all hope we all are. So Trimbath Creative, all one word, .wordpress.com.
Thank you so much for being with me today, Tom.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate that.
Okay. And until we talk again, and maybe I'll have you on as an interviewer too, because I know you love people and ideas. So stay tuned, people, if you want to see other interviewers. We'll mix it up a little bit. All right, Tom.
Bye-bye.